Florida is the most memed state in America. Everyone thinks they know what makes it weird. Alligators, Florida man, hurricane chaos. But here's the thing. Almost everything people know about Florida is wrong. The real facts about Florida are so extreme, so genuinely unbelievable, that when you tell people the truth, they think you are making it up. The state where it once snowed in Miami. The state sitting on $2 trillion of sunken treasure. The state where the most electrically violent place in America is a quiet suburb next to Disney World. None of that is exaggerated. None of it is a joke. This video is about the Florida that is hiding in plain sight. The one where the facts that sound fake are the ones that are actually true. The state that's flatter than a pancake. Let's start with something everyone gets wrong. Ask most Americans to name the flattest state in the country, and they'll say Kansas without blinking. It is one of those facts that feels permanently settled. Kansas, flat, done. But a peer-reviewed study by geographers at the University of Kansas, researchers who are from Kansas, proved that the flattest state is actually Florida. Kansas didn't even crack the top 5. Florida's highest natural point is a place called Britton Hill. It sits in the Panhandle, near the Alabama border, and it tops out at just 345 feet above sea level. That is lower than the Washington Monument, which rises 555 feet. The entire state of Florida sits below a single man-made structure in Washington, D.C. Think about that for a second. You could stack every hill, every ridge, every bump in Florida on top of each other and still not reach the top of a stone obelisk on the National Mall. Now, you might remember a famous study from 2003 that proved Kansas was flatter than a pancake. That was real, but there was a catch. Later analysis showed that at the scale those researchers used, every state in America would qualify as flatter than a pancake, even mountainous Colorado. The pancake comparison was mathematically meaningless. The real question was never about pancakes. It was about what flatness actually feels like at human scale. When researchers built an algorithm to simulate what you'd see standing in one spot and turning a full 360 degrees, Florida won by a landslide. 91% of the state qualifies as flat or flatter. And that extreme flatness isn't just a fun fact for trivia night. It's the reason Florida floods the way it does, why storm surge can travel miles inland during a hurricane, and why sea level rise projections for this state look so alarming compared to everywhere else. The ground offers no resistance. Water just spreads, with nothing to stop it. That flatness fact surprised you? The next one is even harder to believe, because it rewrites what you think you know about prehistoric America, BT. The state that missed the dinosaurs. During the age of the dinosaurs, the entire Florida peninsula was underwater. It did not exist as dry land. Not a single square foot of what we call Florida today was above the surface. This is why fossil hunters regularly pull megalodon teeth the size of a human hand from Florida riverbeds. Ancient ocean predators left their bones and teeth scattered across the seafloor that would eventually become this state. But you will never find a single dinosaur fossil anywhere in Florida. Not one. Not a fragment. The land you are standing on in Miami or Orlando or Tampa was ocean floor, while Tyrannosaurus rex walked the earth 1,000 miles to the north. Florida is geologically one of the youngest pieces of ground in America. It was built grain by grain, layer by layer, from sand, silt, and compacted shell deposits as the Atlantic Ocean slowly retreated over millions of years. Beneath the grass and the strip malls and the retirement communities, the ground is a quilt of ancient seafloor, porous, soft, and riddled with cavities where limestone has dissolved over time. That geology explains something that baffles every northerner who moves to Florida: why almost no houses have basements. The ground is too soft, too waterlogged, too close to the water table. Dig down a few feet and you hit saturated limestone, and it explains something far more dramatic: sinkholes. The same porous rock that kept Florida underwater for millions of years is the reason a sinkhole can open beneath a parking lot, a bedroom, or a swimming pool without warning. In 2013, a man in Seffner, Florida, was swallowed by a sinkhole that opened directly beneath his bed while he slept. His body was never recovered. The ground beneath Florida remembers what it used to be, and sometimes it decides to go back. So Florida was underwater for millions of years. It is flatter than Kansas, and this is where it really gets unbelievable. It once snowed in Miami. The day it snowed in Miami. On January 19, 1977, snow flurries fell across South Florida for the first and only time in recorded history. Snow is reported as far south as Homestead, near the tip of the peninsula, the farthest south snowfall ever documented in the continental United States. People pulled their cars to the side of the road. They ran outside in shorts and sandals. Children who had never seen snow tried to catch it on their tongues. The high temperature in Miami that day reached only 47 degrees Fahrenheit, the second coldest afternoon the city had ever recorded. But this was not just a charming weather curiosity. The freeze that accompanied the snow destroyed 35% of Florida's citrus crop and wiped out 95% of vegetable crops statewide. Agricultural damage totaled $350 million in 1977 and over $1.8 billion adjusted for inflation. 150,000 migrant farm workers lost their jobs in a matter of days. The cold even reached underwater. It killed 96% of shallow water. Branching coral at Dry Tortugas National Park, a marine ecosystem that had taken centuries to grow. President Carter declared 35 Florida counties federal disaster areas. A single day of snow nearly broke the state's economy, and the earliest recorded snow in Florida dates back even further, to 1774. Jacksonville residents, having absolutely no frame of reference for what was falling from the sky, described it in their journals as extraordinary white rain. They had literally never seen it before, and they had no word for it. Florida's weather gets even stranger than snow, because the most electrically violent place in the entire United States is a quiet suburb you've probably driven through on the way to Disney World. The Lightning Caffs, next to the Magic Kingdom. Four Corners, Florida, an unincorporated community that spans 4 counties located just 2 miles west of Animal Kingdom, recorded 1,229 lightning events per square mile in 2022, more than anywhere else in America. Florida as a whole averages over 1 million cloud-to-ground lightning strikes per year, more than 3,000 per day during storm season. During Hurricane Ian in 2022, lightning was detected in the storm's eye wall every 3 seconds. The reason comes down to pure geography. Florida is a narrow peninsula flanked by 2 warm bodies of water, the Gulf of Mexico on one side and the Atlantic Ocean on the other. Every afternoon in summer, sea breezes from both coasts push inland and collide somewhere in central Florida. That collision zone, right around 4 Corners, right around the theme parks, is where the atmosphere becomes violently unstable. Warm, moist air surges upward into towering thunderheads that can reach 60,000 feet. Storms form with the regularity of a bus schedule. You can almost set your watch by the 3 p.m. rumble. Florida's nickname is the Sunshine State, and that is genuinely misleading. It's also the state with the most dangerous electrical storms in America. Locals treat the daily afternoon thunderstorm the way Northerners treat rush hour traffic, an unavoidable part of the day. You plan around it, you don't fight it, and you definitely don't stand under a tree holding a golf club when the sky turns black. Florida's geography creates extreme weather, but it also created the most famous internet meme in history, and the real story behind it is nothing like what you think. The meme that's really a law. Florida Man isn't evidence that Floridians are uniquely unhinged. It's evidence that Florida has the most transparent public records laws in America. Florida's sunshine laws make arrest reports, police records, and government documents accessible to anyone who asks, including journalists scanning for a quick viral headline. In most states, the story about a man wrestling an alligator in a Wendy's parking lot at 3 a.m. would never leave the courthouse filing cabinet. In Florida, it's front-page content before lunch. The same kinds of bizarre incidents happen everywhere. Every state has its share of absurd misdemeanors and inexplicable human behavior. But Florida is the only state where the machinery of public records turns every strange arrest into a potential news story. The meme took hold because the supply of weird headlines is effectively infinite, not because Florida produces more chaos than other states. but because Florida shows its work. Every arrest, every incident report, every police log is public record by default. Other states bury this information behind bureaucratic barriers, redactions, and Freedom of Information Act requests that can take weeks. Florida hands it over the same day. Florida Man is really a transparency story disguised as a chaos story, and it raises a question nobody ever asks. What kind of headlines would your state generate if its records were just as open? Florida's transparency law explains the headlines, but there's one Florida stereotype that's actually undersold. The only place on Earth. Florida is the only place on the planet where American alligators and American crocodiles naturally coexist in the same habitat. Not in a zoo, not in a wildlife park. In the wild, sharing territory. There are roughly 1.3 million alligators spread across the state in freshwater environments, while American crocodiles inhabit the brackish coastal waters of the southern tip. The Everglades is the overlap zone, the single ecosystem on Earth where both species share the same ground and the same water. But despite the fear, gator attacks on humans are rare. Since 1948, there have been roughly 500 reported attacks in Florida, about 30 fatalities total over 75 years. You're statistically more likely to be killed by a flying champagne cork. Nearly all attacks result from human behavior. Feeding gators is illegal. Swimming in unmarked water at night increases risk. Walking small dogs along pond edges at dusk looks to a gator like a meal presenting itself. And the animal most Floridians actually worry about at the beach is not sharks either. Only 14 unprovoked shark bites statewide. In 2024, 0 fatalities. It is stingrays. That is why locals do something called the stingray shuffle, dragging their feet through the sand as they wade into the Gulf to warn rays hiding on the bottom to move out of the way. If you see someone shuffling like a penguin at a Florida beach, they are not being weird. They are being smart. It is the kind of insider knowledge that separates tourists from people who actually live there. Alligators, crocodiles, stingrays, but there is something else in that water that most people have no idea about. $2 trillion on the ocean floor. An estimated $2 trillion in lost treasure sits within 60 miles of Florida's coast. Centuries of Spanish galleons, pirate ships, and merchant vessels from the colonial shipping trade sank in storms, ran aground on reefs, or were taken by privateers, and they left behind a fortune scattered across the ocean floor. This is not folklore or legend. Modern salvage operations continue to pull coins, gold bars, emeralds, and artifacts from wrecks along a stretch of Atlantic coastline that is literally named the Treasure Coast for exactly this reason. Off Key Largo, there is a submerged bronze statue called Christ of the Abyss, a 9-foot figure standing on the seabed in 25 feet of water, arms reaching toward the surface. Divers visit it like an underwater cathedral, swimming down through blue-green light to find this silent figure waiting on the sand. And here is where the through line connects. The same geology that kept Florida underwater for millions of years, the same ancient seafloor from earlier in this video, also positioned the peninsula directly in the path of the most heavily trafficked shipping lanes in the age of exploration. Every galleon loaded with New World gold had to navigate past Florida's reefs, Florida's hurricanes, and Florida's shallow shoals. The geology that made Florida did not just shape the land, it shaped the history. It turned the coastline into a graveyard for ships and a treasure vault for anyone patient enough to look. Florida is full of things hiding beneath the surface. But some of the things sitting right in plain sight are not what they seem either. That iconic buoy in Key West, the one that reads southernmost point in the continental United States and attracts a 30-minute selfie line every single day, is wrong. It is not even the southernmost point on Key West itself. The real tip of the island sits inside a naval air station that is off limits to the public. And the actual southernmost point of the continental United States is Ballast Key, a small private island about 10 miles to the west that nobody can visit. Key West itself is closer to Havana, Cuba, 90 miles across the strait, than it is to Miami, which sits 160 miles up the coast. Jacksonville is the largest city in the United States by land area, covering 875 square miles. That is bigger than New York City. Wild flamingos, the bird plastered on every Florida postcard, Every pool float, every piece of tourist merchandise were actually thought to be extinct in the state for decades. Small populations have only recently been confirmed in the Everglades. Most of the pink birds tourists excitedly photograph from their rental cars are actually roseate spoonbills, a completely different species that just happens to be pink. There is a town in Florida called Christmas, and its residents lean into the holiday spirit year-round, with post office stamps, decorations in July, the whole performance. Florida was home to the first NASA rocket launch in 1950, the first communication satellite launch in 1960, and it has 12 international airports, more than most countries on Earth. The state that defies its own story. Florida is the state where reality consistently outperforms fiction. The memes, the headlines, the stereotypes, they are the least interesting things about it. The real Florida story is geological, meteorological, and historical. A state built on ancient ocean floor, flatter than Kansas by scientific measurement, struck by more lightning than anywhere in America, home to the only alligator-crocodile overlap zone on the planet, and sitting above $2 trillion in sunken treasure. It is the only state where it once snowed in Miami, and 18th century residents described it as extraordinary white rain because they had never seen it before. The facts that sound fake are the ones that are true. The things everyone thinks they know about Florida are the real fiction. Every state has secrets. Florida just has better ones, and thanks to the Sunshine Law, it cannot keep any of them.